I believe we are all set. President Ettinger, whenever you're ready.
Well, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I will now call the University Senate to order. Our second item, I think that's the second, calling to order is the first item, concerns administrative responses to the University Senate action, and they were presented for information purposes. Our third item is a list of recent faculty, staff, and student deaths that have been sent for announcement to the Senate. I invite you to observe a moment of silence while I read the names. From faculty staff, Karen Braidmeyer, John Broadhurst, Walter Gregg, Janet Hopkins, Matur Kanan, Ted Labuza, Barbara Lenhoff, Michael Meck, Ned Mohan, Tap Payne, Carol Peterson, Donald Reinke, Doreen Wallace, Terry Wallace, and William West. Students, Geo Beach, Edmund Hamilton, CJ Kenyua, Lachlan McLean, Brian Vang. Item number 4 is approval of the minutes of the University Senate meeting on November 30th, 2023. Amber, would you please initiate the poll?
Couple more seconds if you wish to vote. There being 101 ayes and 2 nays, that motion carries.
Thank you. The next item is my president's report. It's my pleasure to be with you here again today. These are important times for the University of Minnesota as we choose a new leader and attempt to secure funding for the future. I'll begin by talking about the University of Minnesota's request to the Minnesota Legislature, which opened its 2024 session last Monday, February 12th. And already we've been busy at the Capitol with university leaders testifying in front of various committees, including the House Capital Investment Committee on Monday of this week, the Senate Higher Education Committee hearing on Tuesday of this week, and the House Higher Education meeting, which I attended this morning. Today is also U of M Day at the Capitol, an event for students, faculty, staff, and alumni to show their support for the University of Minnesota. The day included a rally at 10 a.m. on the front steps of the Capitol, and I understand last year's attempt at a rally got blizzarded out, so the wonderfully nice weather today was certainly a boon to attendance at that rally. And we also are now having a showcase this afternoon in the vault at the Capitol. In even years for the Minnesota Legislature, the work tends to be focused along capital improvement projects around the state. Correspondingly, a primary focus for the U of M is our capital budget request, which this year is entirely devoted to HEAPR, or Higher Education Asset Preservation and Replacement. Our HEAPR request for $500 million would allow for the renewal of more than 150 buildings to support education, research, and outreach across the state of Minnesota. The funding would help address a large and growing backlog of facility needs on all of our campuses. We are also advancing a supplemental budget request, which includes $45 million in recurring operational funds. This would allow the university to keep costs lower for students by minimizing tuition increases, retaining talented faculty and staff through increased compensation, investing in more student support services, and addressing a portion of expected cost increases. In addition, the Board of Regents passed an amendment to the supplemental request based on the university's vision for an academic health system as presented to the Governor's Task Force on Academic Health. This addition requests $80 million annually to improve healthcare by expanding and enhancing training opportunities to grow the pool of health professionals in Minnesota, improving equity and access to clinical care for underserved populations, and enhancing research to improve health outcomes. The Regents also recently approved a non-binding letter of intent that will establish a new path forward for the University of Minnesota in our relationship with Fairview Health Services. We've been engaged in conversations with Fairview for many months about refining the terms of our relationship, and this LOI signals an agreement to advance discussions toward creating a new relationship with Fairview. This path forward, the shared vision between our entities, would include the university potentially purchasing the 4 academic health facilities on and around the Twin Cities campus. mHealth Fairview University of Minnesota Medical Center, which is the East and West Bank hospitals, the Masonic Children's Hospital, and the Clinics and Surgery Center. In the meantime, we expect and anticipate no changes for patients, care terms, or employees as we work toward a definitive agreement. In addition, the university's vision for academic health foresees a new hospital as part of UMC. This letter of intent was also approved by the governing boards of the Fairview Health Systems and the University of Minnesota physicians. It allows the parties to begin the next steps of due diligence around creating such a relationship. This LOI does leave much room for future consideration as we work in the upcoming months, along with Fairview and UMP, to develop a definitive agreement. I was glad to have the opportunity to speak with legislators at a special breakfast prior to the Regents meeting, and I'll continue to be engaged with state and federal legislative leaders throughout the sessions. Our new Executive Director for Government and Community Relations, Melissa Lopez-Franzen, and I were in southern Minnesota recently, along with Minnesota State Chancellor Scott Olson. We met with editorial and news writers from Rochester and Winona publications to discuss the role our systems play for all Minnesotans and stress the importance of state investments in our capital requests. Again, this year, we'll be counting on strong engagement from our many advocates around the state and beyond, including students, faculty and staff, and the system's 600,000 plus alumni. Executive Director Franzen and her office will be active in coordinating these activities, and I'd also like to recognize and thank our 2 faculty legislative liaisons for this year, Donna Spanis-Martin and Robert Blair. We need everyone's voice as we speak on behalf of a stronger and better University of Minnesota. Of course, our outreach efforts extend beyond our elected officials. I recently conducted interviews covering many University of Minnesota topics with our own Minnesota Daily and also with the Star Tribune editorial board. I also had the chance to talk with the Minnesota State Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors and the Twin Cities Communications Council. I'd like to briefly address the ongoing conflict in the Middle East and some of its ramifications on our campuses. Let me first say that I understand the human toll that this conflict has taken on people connected to the U. Every day there are students and employees, some of whom I've met with, that wake up not knowing if their relatives or friends are okay. Since October 7th, we have focused our efforts on supporting members of our community with all available university resources, and we will continue to do so. I'd also like to clearly state that this university will not tolerate calls for genocide of any class of people at the university. To be clear, calls for genocide and other forms of misconduct, discrimination, and harassment have no place at the University of Minnesota. This university has a strong record of responding to and acting against misconduct in all its forms, no matter who is the perpetrator and who is the victim. On the issue of speech, I have held several listening sessions with students, faculty, and alumni, and I have taken the opportunity to reiterate that the university needs to remain a place where people can express their opinions, whether they're students, staff, or faculty. As a public research university, we must provide a place for the expression of diverse views and opinions. This is not only required by the U.S. Constitution, it's really a core part of our mission. The university supports the right of all members of our community to speak and to peacefully demonstrate about ideas they support or to protest against ideas they find unjust or offensive. The Board of Regents policy on academic freedom and responsibility states that faculty and academic staff have the freedom to speak and write on matters of public concern, and also the responsibility to ensure that when they speak, they make it clear that they are not speaking for the institution. Our administration has been working with individual faculty and departments to ensure that we uphold this policy, including disclaimers that academic departmental statements do not represent the views of the university. We continue to work with university governance and especially with the Faculty Senate, the Faculty Consultative Committee, and the Academic Freedom and Tenure Committee to consider how to provide guidance for members of our university community on statements on matters of public concern. As is the case with many issues of public significance, full engagement from all quarters of the university in this policy development and a corresponding respect for hearing out all points of view is itself part of the educational mission of the university. We want to take the time to do this right, and it will involve the new president of the university once they are named and in office. Turning to other updates, last month, our Crookston, Duluth, and Rochester campuses were awarded the Carnegie Classification for Community Engagement, joining the Twin Cities and Morris campuses. This makes the U of M the country's first and only university system at which every individual campus has received this selective designation. At last February's Board of Regents meeting, the university announced its intention to return the land on which the Cloquet Forestry Center resides to the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa. Related conversations and discussions have continued and progressed since that time. As a next step in that process, the university hosted a public engagement session earlier this month at the Cloquet Forestry Center. It was a welcome opportunity to engage with members of the Fond du Lac Band, local community members in the broader Cloquet area, as well as our forestry program alumni and others in the forest industry. The overall tone of the session was respectful, providing space for a number of different speakers to express a diverse range of opinions. There was an overarching sentiment of optimism that with the land under the care of the Fond du Lac Band, close collaboration between the U of M and the band will continue to allow mutually beneficial research, education, and outreach to go on the land going forward. I recently attended an event to celebrate the launch of CLA's George Morrison Center for Indigenous Arts. This new center is a great example of the type of interdisciplinary, publicly engaged work that the university is known for, involving partners from multiple CLA departments and community organizations. It honors the late George Morrison, a member of the Grand Portage Band of Minnesota Chippewa tribe, who was a renowned painter and sculptor. Morrison taught American and Indian Studies and Art at the University of Minnesota from 1970 to 1983. February is Black History Month, and events and celebrations are taking place across our campuses. I attended the 43rd annual Martin Luther King Jr. tribute concert at the TED Band Concert Hall on January 14th. And I really appreciate both the poignant stories and impressive artistic talent that were part of that event. And University Relations is featuring the annual Where It Starts series of stories on our students, faculty, and staff and alumni on the U of M website. They highlight individuals and communities who contribute to make Black history at the University of Minnesota and beyond. And then lastly, a quick word about the search for new leaders. Our search for the University of Minnesota Duluth's next chancellor is well underway. The committee has completed its first round of interviews and has forwarded 3 recommended finalists, and they've been invited to participate in on-campus interviews at UMD in March. And as you, I'm sure all know, the search for the next president of the University of Minnesota system has been on a fast track, and we're nearing the conclusion. The 3 finalists have traveled to each of our system campuses over the last 2 weeks for a series of public forums. The Board of Regents will be interviewing the finalists in a public meeting on this upcoming Monday, and it is anticipated that the board will select a president-designate immediately following the public interviews. If you have not done so already, please consider providing feedback on the 3 finalists on the presidential search website. I know that the Regents greatly appreciate the input they have received throughout the search process. I'm looking forward to working in collaboration with the president-designate, and we'll see how the calendars work, if it's the typical academic year that they arrive in the summertime or some other time than that. That concludes my report, and we can turn to questions to the president. There were none submitted in advance, but I'd be happy to take a couple of questions from the floor. I don't see any questions, or haven't seen any hands raised for questions. So I will turn to item 7 of the agenda, which is the Provost report. Provost Croson, please go ahead.
Thank you, Interim President Ettinger, and hello, everybody. I want to start off by expanding a little on what Interim President Ettinger said around departmental statements about matters of current events. So as you know, the war in the Middle East is roiling campuses all over our country. The good news is that things have been relatively calm on our 5 Minnesota campuses. We haven't seen interpersonal violence like we've seen in other places. We've had room for peaceful protests, and we've had only a few instances of graffiti or property damage. But like many other places, we are struggling with departmental statements. So after October 7th, we had 4 units making statements. One of those has since come down. A new one has since come up. So we still have 4 units. As Interim President Ettinger mentioned, our Board of Regents policy on academic freedom and responsibility is quite clear about what happens when individuals who engage in scholarly activities want to speak about matters of public concern. What is less clear is what our policy is around when a department wishes to make a statement. And in particular, what does it mean when a department speaks? For whom are they speaking? So we are continuing to work on an administrative policy, which would be linked to the Regents policy on academic freedom and responsibility, to clarify what happens when collections of individuals want to speak on a matter of public concern. I began this discussion with the Faculty Senate Committee on Academic Freedom and Tenure in fall of 2022, so more than a year ago. They discussed the idea at their September 22 meeting, and I attended their November 22 meeting in order to get feedback. Our presidential transition and other issues took center stage, and so it was not until December 23, more than a year after that discussion, and about 3 months ago, that I had the chance to meet with them again and look at a draft policy. Our plan was to consult that draft policy this spring, have a proposed policy out for public comment in March with approval in June. And in fact, today was planning to be one of those consultations. But what we heard from the Academic Freedom and Tenure Committee is that they felt that this process of policy development was going too fast. And so after discussions with Interim President Ettinger and leadership of our Board of Regents, we've agreed to a new and slower timeline. So at the moment, we're planning on constructing a presidential task force to be convened this spring that would develop a recommendation for next September. We would do our consultation over fall 24 instead of spring 24. There would be a proposed policy in December 24 with approval in February 2025. So that's a policy in place about a year from now, over 2 years since we started the discussion, 18 months after the statements were posted, and about a 9-month delay from our original timeline. I understand that AF&T is bringing a resolution to Faculty Senate asking for additional time to study this problem, and this plan is designed to grant them that time. We look forward to hearing their input on this policy and to communicating that input into the task force's deliberations whenever they're ready. We also agree with AF&T that the task force should include a majority of individuals who are subject to the Regents policy on academic freedom and responsibility, which covers all employees engaged in scholarly work. So that includes, of course, our tenure system faculty, but also our contract faculty, our P&A faculty, librarians, research assistants, and many others. But we also know that the policy around departmental statements will affect many other individuals. We've heard from department chairs who have to manage the dynamics among their faculty in creating these statements. We've heard from faculty and staff in other departments who feel attacked or devalued. We've heard from undergraduate advisors who need to interface with concerned students. We've heard from students themselves who worry that because of their own identity, their religion, or their country of origin, they won't be treated fairly or objectively in the classroom. We've heard from DEI professionals who are struggling with balancing the needs of all of their constituents. So our plan is to construct a diverse task force that would incorporate all of these voices. It would include representation from our greater Minnesota campuses, and ideally would be able to propose a policy next fall. I'm happy to hear your thoughts on this proposed path forward. I do have some other updates, so I'm planning to take questions at the end. While we're talking about the Middle East, we have a slight update around our travel restrictions to Israel. So some of you might have remembered that when the war broke out, our insurer said that we could no longer insure either students or faculty staff who travel to the region. This is kind of common when there's an active war zone. The good news is that the carrier has now approved coverage for faculty and staff travel, for non-student travel to specific regions in Israel, not all of them, but some of them. And so for individuals who are planning on traveling or hoping on traveling, there'll be an announcement from GPS Alliance probably in the next day or two to give an update on those areas. We also continue our negotiation with the Graduate Labor Union, led by OHR with strong representation from colleges. They have held 8 two-day bargaining sessions. They have reached agreement on 17 non-economic articles in the new contract. We're pleased that the sessions have been respectful and constructive, and we look forward to continued progress there. Like many other campuses, we are actively managing the delay in the FAFSA, the Federal Application for Financial Aid. We have delayed our commitment dates, the dates by which students need to commit to attend the university, to May 15th on the Twin Cities campus and June 1 or later on the greater Minnesota campuses. 6 of the 14 other Big Ten colleges have also delayed till May 15. One's delayed till June 1. There are 6 that are still at May 1. But we're continuing to monitor that situation closely, and we're prepared to act very quickly once the financial information comes in from the federal government. We also continue to work on implementing the Supreme Court decision in admissions and some of our scholarship practices. We have external advisors, including our own OGC, the legal counsel for the University of Minnesota Foundation. Everyone's telling us we're on the right track, so we keep going there. We also continue to work on what we internally talk about as systemness, including in admissions, in course transferability, so making clear which courses can transfer between campuses. And I am still personally dreaming of a world where all of our campuses have the same academic calendar. We are not there yet, but it is my goal. Quick update on searches. So we have 3 dean searches active: the law school dean search, the College of Liberal Arts dean search, and the CCAPS dean search. Those search committees are all formed. Their work is well underway. We've also have searches to replace Vice Provost and Dean of Undergraduates Bob McMaster, who's been just a fantastic member of my senior leadership team. And we have, again, search committees underway and candidates applying. So hopefully all of those positions will be filled by next fall. And then finally, we continue our work around an updated core curriculum. Will Durfee in CSE has been chairing that committee for 2 years now. He's done an excellent job. that proposal will be brought to Faculty Senate for vote later in the spring. So that is my list of updates. I'm happy to take no questions in advance, but I'm happy to take questions or comments on any of those topics.
Thank you, Provost Croson. Any questions for the Provost? Yes, Kathleen.
Hello, thanks for taking my question. I'm Kathleen Borslory. I'm from the College of Vet Med. And I have a question that is really kind of going to bring together what's happening in the Middle East and other places with graduate education and our research enterprise. And I think it's really important for our research enterprise to bring this up, in addition to what's going on with the unions and things. And so research funding has always been very hard to get. And we have faculty who are very well-trained and are very motivated and do a fantastic job of applying for research funding. With the ongoing wars, with the unrest, there is a new sort of, I would just be really blunt, there are many polarizing issues at bay, as you all know, to fund research, to fund the wars. And, I know this is a very difficult topic. At the same time, we have graduate students who are thinking of unionizing, and conventional wisdom is that that's probably going to be a large burden on the professors that need to pay for their stipend and their tuition. At other Big Ten universities, the graduate tuition is routed through the graduate school in a mechanism called fee authorization, which you may be familiar with. And the rationale is that the graduate faculty are spending vast amounts of time training students in their labs to do research, doctoral dissertations, and that that the payment for the tuition needs to really help offset that cost. And so the fee authorizations are basically a waiver for the tuition. And I would really like to talk about that more, but I'm bringing that up at a time when myself and my faculty colleagues are talking to each other and really just frightened that our ability to bring in graduate students is at an all-time low. And I need to stop talking, and I wish we could talk about this more. And I think it would be really important for the research enterprise as a whole. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Kathleen. And I'm happy to talk about this more, either directly with you, or if you want to reach out to Scott Lanyon, the Dean of Graduate School. I know he's got thoughts about this as well. I do want to be clear about one thing, which is the graduate students are not thinking about unionizing. They have unionized, right? This is a done deal. They had their vote. It's been certified. It's happening, right? I totally understand, of course, the idea that we could offer a tuition and fee waiver rather than collecting tuition from people with grants, for example, or from departments that are employing teaching assistants. On the other hand, just to be clear, we are not making new money here. So what that means is that if we are not collecting tuition from those external grants, that is money that is not going to the college, right, in order to pay for the instruction of these students. So, as you know, our 100% of the tuition we collect goes to the academic units, 75% based on the student credit hours, 25% based on the majors. For most graduate education, it's 100% to the unit itself, because you pretty much just take classes in your units. So if we didn't collect that, we would simply not pass that along and not collect that. I do know that Julie Tomlinson is planning a review of our budget model over the next academic year. This is something we need to do about every 10 years, and it's been 10 years, and so it's time to do that. And I think that this question would be a really great one to bring to that process of, do we want to not collect and not pay, or do we want to collect and pay?
Right, or do we want to collect the indirect costs, but have a means to support faculty to teach those graduate students and get those grants? And so it's really not a one-to-one dollar sum.
Sure.
Thank you for that information.
Any other questions for the provost? Don't see any, so thank you very much. We will move on to item 9, which is our SCC report. Professor B, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Ettinger. Good afternoon, everyone. It sort of feels like ages since we were together the last time back at the end of November. Though it feels a little too late to wish you a Happy New Year. I do hope everyone has settled into a comfortable rhythm for the spring semester. As you will recall, an item of new business pertaining to a statement related to the ongoing war in Gaza was introduced at the November 30th meeting of the University Senate. A motion to take up the item for immediate discussion did not meet the required 2/3 majority to pass. According to the Senate rules, the item was referred to the Senate Consultative Committee for consideration and presentation at the next regular meeting of the University Senate, which is today's meeting. I wrote a letter dated December 5th to the statement authors after the November 30th meeting, outlining possible next steps for their statement. That letter is included for information as item number 13 on today's University Senate agenda. On the 23rd of January, the SCC Vice Chair, Jen Goodnow, and I met with the statement authors to discuss and review possible paths forward for their statement in advance of the SCC meeting on February 12th. At that SCC meeting, the authors shared an updated and revised statement with the committee. The SCC had a robust discussion with the statement authors about the content and the merits of the statement. And at the end of that discussion, the SCC approved a motion to put the statement on today's University Senate agenda for discussion and a vote. It is item number 11 on today's University Senate agenda. If you have not already done so, I would encourage you to please read the statement in advance of our discussion later in the meeting. Also at its February 12th meeting, the SCC met briefly with Provost Croson to hear about her updated plans for creating a new administrative policy on unit statements on issues of public concern, which she just told us about. The committee then discussed a draft resolution on the same topic that the Senate Committee for Academic Freedom and Tenure, or AF&T, asked the Faculty Consultative Committee, or the FCC, which I also chair, to put on the Faculty Senate agenda. And just as a reminder, AF&T is a Senate committee that reports up through the Faculty Senate, not the University Senate, so that's why the resolution took that path. And according to its charge, AF&T is responsible for all matters of policy related to academic freedom. And if you read the specifics of their charge, it's pretty clear that AF&T is the committee within our Senate structure that should be considering how unit statements and related policies intersect with concerns over academic freedom. That said, and as the provost said earlier, unit statements can have broad impacts on members of the university community and beyond. So I thought it was also important for the SCC, that's the Senate Consultative Committee, to discuss the AF&T resolution and related issues, which we did last week. So the AF&T resolution is up for discussion and a vote at today's Faculty Senate meeting, and it's listed as item number 7 on that agenda. And I'll have more to say about the resolution during the FCC Chair's report at today's Faculty Senate meeting. One last item of business taken up by the SCC at its February 12th meeting was a discussion of a resolution on supporting students in recovery from substance use disorder. So this resolution asks the university to fund a full-time recovery coordinator to help create a more supportive community for students in recovery from substance use disorder. And the resolution is being proposed by the Disabilities Issues Committee, and it's been endorsed by the Social Concerns Committee, the Equity, Access, and Diversity Committee, and the Student Senate Consultative Committee. And I anticipate that resolution coming before the University Senate at our next meeting on March 28th. And I will just conclude reiterating something President Ettinger said earlier. I want to give a brief reminder to everyone to be sure to visit the Presidential Search website and to provide your feedback by noon tomorrow. Noon tomorrow, that's your deadline. On the 3 finalists for president. And the board will be interviewing all 3 finalists at a special meeting on Monday, the 26th. And I think we will have a new president by Monday afternoon. Sorry, we will have a named new president. Sorry, President Ettinger, you're still employed after Monday, I think. And that concludes the SCC Chair's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor B. Item number 10 is a discussion and a vote on proposed changes to the Regents Scholarship Policy. Mary Roman Cool from the Office of Human Resources is here to give you a brief reminder about the changes, and then we'll have a few minutes for discussion before we vote. Mary, please proceed.
Thank you. I'll keep my comments relatively short. Over the last year, we've been getting a lot of feedback on the Regents Scholarship policy, and we've been taking very careful notes, listening to different parties about improvements that they think should be made to the policy. And I would say that the improvements that were recommended fell into four main categories: make the program more accessible, simplify the policy and process that are used to request the benefit, trust our employees to use the program appropriately, and finally improve awareness of the tax implications with the benefit. So we had a cross-functional work group that met for several months. It included representatives from OHR, our tax department, One Stop, and then we also had representatives from the FCC, the P&A, Senate, and Civil Service group as well. So the changes that you'll see and that I know have heard about in my previous presentation is that we've reduced the approvals that are needed to use the program. You no longer require HR lead signature, a second level supervisor signature, and in most cases, you don't even need a manager signature to use the benefit. We've made small expansions to the program. You now can take as many courses as you would prefer at a single time. Those on the layoff list aren't required any longer to job-related courses. Reimbursement is no longer prorated if you term your employment midterm. We've simplified the forms and processes as requested, and in fact, we've included one point of contact for submitting forms. Now, if you want to fill out the forms and use the benefit, you just submit those documents to our contact center in OHR. So simple, one place to go, submit your form, and we route it from there. And then tax form language has been simplified, forms have been streamlined, and there's much better illustrations created for people to understand how they will be taxed on the benefit of the program. And then finally, we've renamed the program to the Regents Tuition Benefit. We think that's a little bit more, it will help people understand that you don't need to qualify high merit standing, for example, to be able to use the program. So we have taken our policy, our recommended policy, and all the related documents to all of the governance groups over the last few months. We've taken it to the Policy Advisory Committee, and we've incorporated all of the recommended edits into the document that have been provided to you today. Those are my opening remarks. I don't know if there's questions or anything I can help clarify.
So if anyone does have a question or comment, please raise your hand and send a chat to Aaron Heath stating whether your comment is pro, con, or other, and I will defer to Aaron to call on people in the appropriate order, and then Mary will get to answer the question.
Okay, hi there. I'm calling in Whitney Taha Frakes, Pro.
Yes, Whitney Taha Frakes, P&A Chair. I wanted to just applaud the work that was done on this policy review and incorporating many of our P&A constituents' feedback into the redesign. And then also, I think just having a one-stop shop for contact is going to help tremendously in removing some of the barriers that were identified with the approvals and limitations on credits and that sort of thing. So thank you, and I just applaud the work that the group did in this effort.
Doesn't look like any others, Aaron. Okay.
Oh.
We can now proceed with the vote. The motion on the floor is to approve the proposed changes. And Amber, please go ahead with the poll.
A few more seconds if you wish to vote. Oh, interesting. Okay, I'm gonna stop it and relaunch it then.
Okay.
People are saying that it closed right away and
Yeah, I don't vote, but mine did that. I noticed
yeah,
it kind of
okay.
flashed on the screen and left, so, okay.
I must have bumped something. Let's just relaunch it. There we go. All right, a few more seconds if you wish to vote. There being 135 ayes and 0 nays, that motion carries.
Very good.
Thank you.
Our next item is a discussion and vote on the proposed ceasefire position statement. I would like to call on Niall Drabeck to introduce this item.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Seems to be working.
All right, perfect. Thank you, President Edinger, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Niall Drabeck. I'm a CLA senator and a project lead for this position statement. My colleagues and I are grateful for the opportunity to present this position statement to you today. We have spent hundreds of hours on this project and are excited to see what you think. My co-lead on this project, John Grossman, will now walk you through why and how we wrote this. So without further ado, I'm going to turn over to John.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to briefly share my screen to be able to share the deck that I prepared. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Okay, amazing. So my name is John Grossman. I am the Undergraduate Student Government's Federal Government Affairs Coordinator, and as Niall mentioned, a co-lead on this project. I'm going to just be briefly walking everyone through our position statement in support of a ceasefire and the release of all captives in Israel and Gaza. So beginning with some background on why we believe this position statement is so vital. Since October 7th, the crisis in Israel and Gaza has unsettled countless members of our campus community. Furthermore, on October 11th, President Ettinger shared an email titled Personal Reflections on Israel and Gaza, where he offered vital support to affected community members and explicitly condemned the horrific attacks carried out by Hamas. Since then, however, the violence in Gaza has escalated, and there has not been another public statement acknowledging the catastrophic loss of Palestinian life. This statement seeks to close that loop and offer additional support to the students, staff, faculty, and administrators who have been so deeply impacted by this crisis. Additionally, for more context, in February of 2022, the University Senate made a very important explicit statement of solidarity with Ukraine following Russia's unconscionable invasion. We believe this was a vital step to demonstrate the Senate's values in a time of international turmoil, and we believe that the crisis in Gaza requires similar action to extend support to our university community. So moving forward to talk about our very broad and very detailed consultation process. Consultation has been at the core of our effort since the beginning of our work in October. We focus our outreach on effective student groups and held conversations with both Jewish and Palestinian organizations to understand how this violence was impacting them. We also reached out to other cultural organizations across the Twin Cities to hear how this crisis has affected our community more broadly. These meetings all impacted our position statement, and we worked to incorporate as many diverse viewpoints as possible. Also, since the December Senate meeting, which Professor B mentioned, where we brought forward a separate resolution as new business, we received feedback from a number of senators on content, format, and our procedure. So we have since worked to further align our position statement with the University Senate guidance. So we wanted to highlight some core aspects of our position statement. First, we begin by recognizing the tragic loss of life on October 7th, and then we also acknowledge and specifically enumerate the human cost of the violence in Gaza. This reflects the extensive feedback we received asking for a university statement that more specifically recognizes the more than 28,000 Palestinians who have been killed in the past 5 months. We also wanted to focus on how this crisis was impacting our campus community as well as students across campuses across the country. In recent months, as I'm sure many people know, both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia have spiked across the US. From threats against Jewish community spaces to attacks on Palestinian and Muslim individuals. Several communities are feeling unsafe on campuses and in their communities. So this position statement promotes peace and asserts that all violence of this magnitude will be properly condemned, regardless of who the victim is or where it occurs. So we also want to clarify some of the language we use. So in our statement, we highlight and quantify some of the ways this crisis has devastated the affected communities. We selected these statistics based on our extensive conversations with Jewish, Palestinian, Arab, Muslim, and Israeli community members here at the U, and we sought to be as detailed in our analysis as we could be while still creating a concise position statement. Our degree of specificity regarding the devastation in Gaza specifically is the direct product of our meetings with affected students, many of whom wanted a statement that more directly addressed and enumerated what their communities are facing. This was a priority since prior university statements on this topic did not include this information. And obviously, while numbers alone cannot fully show the extent of the physical and psychological devastation that impacted communities are facing, we hope that the language we use provides a glimpse into our reasoning and why we reached the conclusion that an end to all violence is so vital. And then just ending with some goals that we have for this position statement, we hope that it'll create a more supportive campus environment for all students, faculty, staff, and administrators. Currently, there is a perceived silence in the university as this crisis continues to escalate. And while we recognize the Senate's limited role in international affairs, we still believe that it is vital to assert our values as a community when so many—
I don't know, this does not fit in there well.
Sorry. While I recognize the Senate's limited role in international affairs, we still believe that it is vital to assert our values as a community when so many groups and individuals are deeply unsettled. We also see this statement as a tone-setting measure. Currently, our campus is deeply divided and the conversation is dominated by opposing factions. The statement gives the university an opportunity to build on its earlier public comments and show that we unilaterally stand against violence. And we believe that standing for lasting peace is going to be the first step to healing divisions in our community. So yeah, thank you for listening, and we welcome any questions that you may have.
Well, thank you to each of the presenters. As a reminder, if you have a question or comment, please raise your hand and send a chat to Aaron Heath stating whether your comment is pro, con, or other. And I will again defer to Aaron to call on people in the appropriate order. And Niall or his colleagues will be answering your questions.
So Alicia, are you pro or con?
I'm con and other, and I've chatted Amber.
Okay, so just for reference, future chats need to come through me for a pro con. So go ahead.
Thank you. First, I want to say that I applaud the students' work and efforts of broad consultation and also your individual rights of free expression on matters of public concern. There really can never be too much care about the campus climate, and it's impressive, the work that you have done. As a CLA senator and director of the journalism school committed to protecting free inquiry on campus, I want to share some significant concerns about this resolution and the language that may be perceived by many to have this body endorse the political position that is not essential to the work of the university. The Chicago Principles of Free Expression argues that universities should remain committed to free and robust and inhibited debate and deliberation. The principles for a campus culture of free inquiry affirm this and state, quote, faculty, administrators, trustees, and political authorities should refrain from compelling scholars and students to endorse or tacitly affirm any opinion that is not necessary for the basic academic functioning of the university. Compelled speech includes the requirement or pressure to express agreement with political or social causes in words and deeds. And where individual students and faculty have the right to speak out regarding any matter, the institution and its units to speak should only about matters that clearly affect their normal operations. In sum, if an academic institution is not required to adopt a position in order to fulfill its mission, it shouldn't. And it's not required to adopt a position. I'm concerned that the current resolution will be viewed negatively by the public and university we serve by endorsing an overly specific policy solution and enumeration of impact relying on non-independent journalistic sources, collecting facts during wartime where
30 seconds remaining.
Disabilities are high. But if we do feel compelled to speak, I do offer a friendly amendment that clarifies the ambiguous language that could be misinterpreted and limits the resolution to the necessary information with comments providing the rationale for that amendment. The amended information would allow this to have a wider campus audience. I'm concerned about the paragraph that describes that Gaza as emboldening bigots rather than describing—
Sorry, your time is up.
Okay, next we have Eric Schwartz, pro.
Eric, you're still on mute. Sorry.
I'm a professor at public affairs at the Humphrey School. I chair the global policy area. I've worked in the White House and the State Department as Assistant Secretary of State. On balance, I support this resolution. I think if a majority of senators support it, then it's an expression of the University Senate. I think that's okay. And I share the sentiments. I do have, I don't know what the parliamentary procedure is here, but I do have a friendly amendment. And I want to suggest a couple very quickly. First, in paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't think the moral imperative is to ease tensions and keep students, faculty, and staff safe. Moral imperative is peace. So I would change is a moral imperative to may also help to ease tensions and keep students, faculty. I think the current language is too self-centered. And I think it's more important to say, we can say it may help. The next paragraph, I would delete the first sentence. I would delete the second sentence. I think a ceasefire is the most viable first step to protect innocent civilian lives. That's critical. But I think you've already made reference to the fact that it could help the campus climate. And by putting this second sentence in there, a ceasefire with the immediate release of all captives will reduce tensions on campus and protect the well-being of affected UM students. I think, again, it misdirects the substance of this resolution. You've already made this point, so I don't think it's necessary to repeat it in the second sentence of the penultimate paragraph. So that would be a part of my amendment.
30 seconds remaining.
And then finally, I would simply say at the end of it, we join the collective call for a ceasefire and immediate release of all captives. I would strike the rest of that sentence because we don't know what's going to happen next. And there's a certain ambiguity in the call for a ceasefire, but we accept that ambiguity. But I don't think we should tie it immediately to a ceasefire. So I would get rid of that the rest of that sentence, and I get rid of it in the position statement. And those are my amendments. They're friendly. I support this measure. I think it's a good measure, but I hope that the drafters would accept it.
Okay, next we have Peter, who is other.
Yeah, I hope you can all hear me. I just from looking at the news and seeing how fraught this issue is on other campuses, I don't feel comfortable taking a position as a senator representing my department without actually having had a in-depth discussion with my department. And the way we schedule our department faculty meetings hasn't worked with the timeline of getting this information. I just want to know if there's room to sort of move the vote so that people like myself who don't want to simply take their own personal opinion on this and make it their department's voice would actually be allowed to have that conversation.
We have a couple of potential friendly amendments and a suggestion to move the vote, but maybe we should go ahead with the other commenter first, and then I'll loop back to our parliamentarian to help sort through the next steps on those.
Okay, Liliana, are you pro or con?
Pro, thanks for asking. And if I should go ahead, I will just begin. I wanted to share that I am pro, and also that I think this is important enough that I'm on parental leave. Taking this short break. I really want to applaud the students' work on this. And I'm here, I teach the racial justice law clinic at the law school. And I know that even in the fall, I co-sign what the students have said about, both fears of anti-Semitism, but also Islamophobia. And I know that some of my brown and Muslim students felt that the early statements were one-sided and felt a little bit erased. And unfortunately, in all that time that has happened, over 30,000 Palestinians have died. So I think some university statements, since the first one that kind of recognizes that obviously any form of oppression, including anti-Semitism, but also Islamophobia, is something that the university should talk about and take a bold stance on. As to consideration about what the university's place is in the Chicago School of Thought. The University of Michigan Faculty Senate recently had a vote in January where they voted to actually divest from Israel. So what's on the table here is less than that, but there is a precedent for universities doing this. I know that at UC Davis, it was the Student Senate that voted to divest, but when it comes to a ceasefire resolution, as the one that we have here, that is very balanced, that I think can be universally accepted. And so I would encourage people to be pro. Thank you.
We are gonna allow discussion to continue, but President Ettinger asked me to weigh in as parliamentarian here and with a little bit of consultation in the background. We have had 2 sets of amendments offered. Elysia, you didn't actually finish offering your amendment. We weren't quite sure what to do with it, but we've decided we might as well let you finish offering your amendment, and the authors have the right to respond to whether they wish to accept that amendment.
So you want to take the 2 sets of amendments separately then, Nancy? Is that how we're doing it?
Yes, I think that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The first amendment I've sent to Aaron and is available on the screen. It shortens the paragraphs after the first paragraph. It changes Gaza in the second paragraph there to Middle East. It uses and rather than and or before Israeli students. It also, which makes them subjected to less threats than other groups with that current juncture. And it uses the term innocent before captives. I assume the authors had a reason for not using the term hostages. All captives are a very broad term. It could be interpreted as for calling the release of not only civilians and troops held by all parties, but of proven terrorists held by Israel, Egypt, France, or even the US. And I'm in favor of them being treated fairly and humanely in line with the Geneva Convention, which prohibits the taking of hostages as well. So that's the nature of the, and it presents it in a balanced way, shortening the amendment, but focusing on the key information and purpose.
So authors, it's your floor to respond to whether you want to consider this a friendly amendment, in which case it would be integrated with no further discussion.
So we were able to discuss this off camera, and on behalf of the authoring team, I don't think we can presently consider this a friendly amendment. To clarify some of the language we used, when we say and or Israeli students, that was not meant as a slight against Israeli students. They are absolutely included, but we do want to say that, there are certain individuals within each group that may have different responses, and we want to make sure to keep that complexity within our language. As for the use of captives, we are referring to obviously the hostages who were brutally taken from their homes on October 7th, as well as, and this comes from our extensive consultation process, individuals on administrative detention in Israel, which means that they have been detained without any proper civil proceeding. So there's no way to, the allegations that were made by Professor Cohen are, I think, not in alignment with what our position statement refers to. We're referring to those who have been taken away without trial and were unable to advocate for themselves or be subjected to a fair judicial process. And we think that a part of creating a stronger, more supportive campus environment here at the U is to recognize the pain that, families of hostages in Israel are facing, as well as the pain as Palestinian families who have, lost their loved ones, their children, their, mothers, their, families in this process. So I think that is very important language. As much as we respect Professor Cohen's input, this presently does not stand as a friendly amendment for us.
And just because we're still having some background conversations about procedure, I think Professor Schwartz, your amendments were presented in a similar way as friendly amendments. And again, I don't, if you have, it sounded like you did finish presenting your amendments. Are you ready for the authors to respond?
You're on mute again, Eric.
Yeah, I support what the students have done. My amendments were really clarifying and not in any way, shape, manner, or form designed to blunt the impact, but really actually to help make the resolution more bulletproof, if you will.
Yeah, thank you for your friendly amendment. We will we'll be taking this as a friendly amendment. We accept your
Thank you, Neil.
friendly amendment, of course.
I'm
Then,
just in the process of getting that printed out or, typed up.
Can I,
so, yeah, go ahead.
I'll just say one other thing. If I was drafting this, I would have drafted it differently. But I think on balance, what you are doing is positive, and I think it serves the institution well. And I think your longer explanation was also very well done. I didn't agree with every single word you said, but I thought it was very thoughtful and persuasive.
Well, thank you. I also just want to mention we have our own friendly amendment at some point, which we'd like to talk about. It's very simple. It's just updating stats. But anyway.
Nancy, do we have to then go back to whether there's a debate?
So this is,
amendment? Yeah.
we're having background conversations to try to get all on the same page about this. The University Senate governing documents state that friendly amendments, if accepted as friendly, are integrated with no further discussion. There is an option for somebody who wishes to offer an amendment that the authors do not wish to accept. Somebody can make a motion to amend, and there's a couple of layers of complexity here. The first option is they would make a motion to consider the amendment. That is a motion for the Senate to consider an amendment against the approval of the movements on the main resolution. If the Senate votes to consider the amendment, we would then discuss the amendment, and there would be a separate vote on whether to accept the amendment. I hope that process is clear. Alicia, do you want to make such an motion?
I do want my motion fully considered, and the reason why is I think it's very important to say that the violence in the Middle East is what is emboldening bigots, and I am concerned about the what I perceive to be the unbalanced nature of the amendment. I will need a second, as my understanding.
Second.
So
So
there's
it's
motion and second, and so now the vote would be on whether to consider the amendment, correct? And this is reminiscent of the process Niall went through the last meeting, I believe, where, okay, you have that first stage to just see if we're even going to consider it. Is that where we're at? Okay.
the distinction is this one is a majority as opposed to a 2/3 majority. From new business is a 2/3 majority.
Okay, it looks like we've posted the vote or the opportunity to vote. Go ahead, Amber, and run that.
I'll do 10 more seconds if you wish to vote. Last call. There being 76 ayes and 60 nays, that motion carries.
So that did pass considering it. And so now what is the next step, Nancy?
The next step is that this is those of you who have your hands up to discuss the primary resolution. You're welcome to comment at this point as well, but the current discussion would be on this proposed amendment, pros and cons of this proposed amendment. At the end of that discussion, we would have another vote as to whether to accept it.
And do I have it correct that the floor is open for 5 minutes of debate about the amendment?
Okay, so Seema, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. Hi, I'm Seema Shakhsari. I'm faculty at Gender, Women, Sexuality Studies. I actually wanted to support the resolution, but in terms of the amendment, a vote was just taken, so I'm not sure why we are having a conversation about pros and cons. But I would say this, that I too, as someone who was subjected to hate crimes, to death threats by Zionists who called me all kinds of transphobic names and Islamophobic names for just standing up for the right of Palestinian people to exist, would say that I would write this differently in a way that would actually say that there are no equal sides. If we are calling Israeli civilians hostages, but calling Palestinians prisoners or terrorists or criminals, there are no equal sides here. And I think if we are to consider thinking about how the language is written, I think the language is extremely neutral. If anything, actually, by thinking about both sides, is hindering the inequalities of power between two very unequal sides, a settler colonial state and a people who do not have a military to defend themselves. 30,000 people have been killed. So the number is not 28,000, but maybe the authors can change, as to 29,600 and something as of today. More than 68,000 people have been injured in Palestine. 1.9 million people have been displaced. UN has declared basically famine. People are being starved to death.
30 seconds remaining.
This is a genocide, and a ceasefire is the first step. But I think as many students, such as Students for Justice in Palestine and Students for a Democratic Society have explained, the university needs to divest from Israel because by supporting the Israeli state, we are complicit in this genocide that is killing thousands of Palestinians. So I would like to propose that the authors take a step further to actually consider divestment, but I would not say that I oppose the ceasefire, because ceasefire is what's needed to save thousands of lives, innocent lives that are being
Sorry, time is up.
slaughtered in Palestine. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Charles Rank, pro amendment. Go ahead, Charles.
Thank you. Yeah, I stand with this amendment. I think if people want to propose other resolutions regarding what the previous speaker just mentioned, they can do so. But at the moment, I think if we are sticking to what this resolution is truly about, which is ending or advocating for a ceasefire and not increasing tensions on campus and making sure that students from a vast variety of groups and backgrounds on campus are not do not feel like they are excluded. I think that taking just the most basic language is important. It remains, this amendment leaves in the language that was already there to advocate for a ceasefire and the release of innocent civilians and captives, and I think for that reason we should all be for this. I think that a lot of whatever else is going on, the other language is just a lot of noise, and I think that will add to a lot of students being excluded or feeling excluded.
Okay, a friendly reminder for those who are raising hands, please chat me if you are pro or con for the amendment. Okay. Okay, so I now yield for a parliamentary question. I've received a comment from one of the authors that they would like to respond to this particular amendment.
I think that the response, I see that there's a hand up in the general speaker order here from one of the authors. I think that the response to say that it wasn't a friendly amendment, sorry, when it was offered as a friendly amendment, the authors responded then. The authors are also welcome to put their hands up in the speaker order here and comment as a standard speaker, I believe.
Okay, so I will proceed with calling on speakers then. So Tony, pro amendment, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for bringing this forward today. I wanted to, I apologize, my camera's off. I'm under the weather, but I thought this was an important thing to attend for. I am pro the change to make note that the violence in the Middle East is emboldening bigots and putting the safety and well-being, that sentence to change from Gaza to the Middle East. I think it's more all-encompassing, and it would include the initial terrorist attack as well, which I think is important. Though I would not be in favor of removing the entire paragraph that makes reference to the events in Gaza, because I think that that takes away from a lot of what the authors were intending with this.
Okay, and then we do have a con amendment. So Eric Schwartz, please go ahead.
Yeah, I will reluctantly vote against this amendment and continue to support the students. And there's really a decision I think this body has to make. To my mind, you know, one of the big differences is that the students' amendment does focus more attention and concern about you know, indiscriminate violence in Gaza, and it's not the students' proposal is not, to my view, is not anti-Israel. It's not even anti, you know, Zionist. It's not. But it does shine a light on a you know, the enormity of the violence that's being done, you know, in Gaza. And so I think this body has a decision to make. You know, do we value the highlighting of that, or do we think you know, a more generic reference to a ceasefire is more appropriate? I think that's a political decision.
Eric, your count, your. Yeah.
But to my mind, I will, you know, continue to support the students' proposal.
Okay, so our the next speaker up is Leith. However, as a guest, you will need to ask a senator to yield their time.
I'll yield time.
Okay. Leith, please go ahead, pro amendment.
Hi, I'm a student in the Gender, Women, Sexuality Studies department. And I have, you know, I've seen horrifying things in the past few months online, but, you know, it really extends to my experience as a student as well. Not too long ago, there was a threat for a mass shooting on campus, specifically targeting Iranian students like myself, and I specifically saw that as a response to the political climate in the Middle East and the dehumanization of Palestinians, which is a part of the Islamophobia that extends to students like myself. And I think that not taking a stand in favor of a ceasefire resolution is only going to increase the risk to students like myself and specifically Palestinian students who have already lost countless family members. So I implore everyone to call for a ceasefire. Thank you.
Technically, we are over time for our discussion on whether to accept this amendment. We had 5 minutes for that. If somebody would like to make a motion to extend the time for discussion on the amendment, we can consider that.
I motion to extend for time.
This is Angel Fancher, and I second it.
Then we need a vote on extending the time of discussion of the amendment.
Coming right up. Nancy, is it 2/3?
I'll check.
I think it is. 10 more seconds. Last call. So there being 93 ayes and 44 nays, 68% have voted in favor to extend the amendment or extend the debate.
Okay, so Niall is next. So Niall, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, authoring team just wanted to say we agree with Tony. I think that changing the language to, I'm just going to be brief. I would like my colleague John to speak, but we're okay with changing it to Middle East, but we're not okay with removing the language about the violence in Israel and Palestine. John, if you want to expand on that, please.
Yes, echoing what Niall said, we agree we would be amenable to changing something from violence in Gaza to the violence in the Middle East. We agree that can add balance and make it more well-rounded. I do want to add that I think that's something that I struggled with as a Jewish student at the beginning of October 7th, was I felt that there wasn't an enumeration of the pain that my community was feeling. And through the last 5 months, where me and the rest of the authoring team been working with students across this campus, including Muslim Palestinian students, I heard the same sentiment, that university communications, as well as what we're hearing from our leaders, is not identifying the scale of devastation that Palestinians are currently facing. I think that if we lose the enumeration of the devastation in Gaza, we're losing a very core part of what this position statement has the power to do, which is to give a voice to those who have been under siege and under violence for the past, now 5 months. And I think that if, for me as a Jewish student, if I want people to understand my pain, I need to have the openness to vocalize and stand with the experience of others. And I really call on others to recognize the importance of recognizing what is happening in Palestine right now.
Could you specify, please, where, in which paragraph that changes? I'm trying to keep up with the friendly amendments.
I will look, but I believe that the change to make the language say the violence in Gaza is in the third to last paragraph, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. It's in the fourth paragraph towards the end, and the language that is in the proposed amendment would strike all of paragraph 3, which I would prefer to not be the case.
Okay, but the friendly amendment is changing the violence in the Middle East is emboldening. That's accepted?
Yes, that is accepted.
All right, so I just made that change in my copy.
Okay, Sarah, could you please let me know if you are a senator or a guest?
Hi, I'm a guest.
Okay, so
I don't know a senator to ask for yielding their time.
I yield my time to Sarah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, please go ahead. Are you pro or con?
I'm against the amendment, the clause about the violence in the Middle East. My name is Serra Hakemez. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Anthropology, and I am from the Middle East. And I am against changing the violence in Gaza to the violence in the Middle East, because that blanket statement is really not explaining what is happening right now. And if there's a call for ceasefire, I think the addressee of that ceasefire is the Israeli state, not the Middle East. So we have to identify the violence, the place of the violence, right? In order to address the one who should be making the ceasefire. So I'm against making such a blanket statement about the Middle East, because the ceasefire, we are asking the Israeli state to make the ceasefire, to make a ceasefire. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, so Shireen, can you refresh my memory if you are pro amendment or con amendment?
I am con amendment.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yep, thank you. I just want to applaud the students for creating the position that they did and put so much effort into it since last November, prior to last November even. So I think there's been plenty of time to review their language, and even they've updated it to this day with current statistics. I think the present document only reflects when they submitted it to the University Senate office, but there's been since January, more statistic updates. And I want to ask if it's possible, and maybe this is a question for Nancy, may I make a motion to revert back to the position statement that the students have offered to have a vote on that?
There's a couple of ways to do that, but we would be doing that after Pavel speaks anyway. So I'm just gonna offer, would you be willing to let Pavel speak? Because then we will be moving fairly quickly to a vote on the original proposition with any amendments that have been accepted by the original authors.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Pavel, go ahead. Also Khan on the amendment.
Yes, hi, I'm a senator from the medical school. And I just want to point out that the way that the amendment reads, I feel like we are losing a little bit of focus of the whole resolution. It almost reads that we demand the ceasefire in Middle East or Gaza, doesn't matter, we know what we're talking about. So we have less tension on the campus. And that's not intention, I believe, of the entire amendment that the students, of the entire document that the students put together. I believe what we want to save lives and stop violence in the region of Middle East and Gaza. And by proxy, we may benefit by having less tensions on the campus. By removing that context from the middle, I feel that we take away the focus of that from saving lives in the Middle East and Gaza and putting too much focus on reducing the tensions on the campus, which I think is probably not the intended, the intention of the authors. So with that comment, I think that the amendment is a little bit phrased in a little bit unfortunate way. Thank you.
We've had a point of information request, and that actually overrides anybody else's speaking. So the point of information is to clarify what was accepted as a friendly amendment during this discussion. And Niall, and your co-author, you're welcome to correct me on this. My understanding is that the phrase "the violence in the Middle East" is being accepted as a replacement simply to the phrase "the violence in Gaza," that was your choice to accept that as a friendly amendment, but not the rest of what has been proposed by Alicia. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And that answers the point of information that was raised. Thank you. I'm
Further
just going
point
to
of information, where is that phrase, "the violence in Gaza," in the original? I don't see it. I see the crisis in Israel and Palestine, but I don't see maybe I see. It's in the middle of paragraph 4, correct?
Correct, and it's been edited now.
Okay, I apologize. Thank you.
Can I just say, I believe that's supposed to be a separate paragraph. Like I think it's supposed to end racism following October 7th and then separate paragraph. I think that's probably why it was a little bit hard to find. I'm not sure if that was accidentally changed or
I copied and
what
pasted.
happened.
It'll probably got messed up.
Okay, yeah, it's a separate paragraph, I think.
So just to clarify where we're at in terms of process, we have just discussed Senator Cohen's proposed amendments. The discussion was on whether to accept that the Senator Cohen's amendment. We had a little bit of a sidetrack there because part of Senator Cohen's amendment was accepted as a friendly. But what would be because the Senate voted to consider the amendment, now the Senate has to vote whether to take this amendment or not. We've run out of time for discussion.
So I would move to call the question, and I believe I need a second. Is that right?
You don't need to move to call the question.
Okay.
Sorry. It's the time has run out for the discussion on the amendment. So the vote here is a yes or no on accepting Senator Cohen's amendment to the original.
Which is shown on your screen. Ten more seconds. Last call. All right, there being 56 ayes and 74 nays, that motion does not carry.
Are we at
Now,
the stage of now voting on the statement as incorporating the friendly amendments and not incorporating the one that just got voted down, correct?
yes.
I see Alicia has her hand up.
I was going to ask a question, but I don't know if it's appropriate for discussion, but I wanted to know what there was an acceptance of the word Middle East for Gaza, and I believe the change from and/or to and. I wanted to know if there was an acceptance of adding the term innocence before captives or not, and why that would be problematic language for the students.
So why and why not is not appropriate for discussion at this point, but the authors can clarify whether they accepted those other changes. I think I saw one of the authors saying no. So.
Yeah, I can add clarity. So we accepted the phrase the Middle East over Gaza. We did not accept and or because we didn't want to like generalize communities on this campus. We thought that that would like allow some added complexity for folks who feel differently about the way this crisis is impacting them. And then in a sense, we believe that the implication is that anyone who has been taken against their will and is being deprived of their family, being deprived of their rights, does not deserve to be in that situation.
To clarify, we are assuming that sorry, can you say that again?
We believe that sorry, we're in the same room. We believe that the implication of the word captives is that someone who has been taken away from their family against their will without any sort of fair process, without any sort of rights afforded to them, and are in a situation where they are serving for some sort of fault that is not their own, that's not been proven of them. And I believe that that is sufficient as is, and as does the rest of the authoring team. So we did not accept that language.
So the time for the original discussion has run out. We can proceed to a vote on the original motion as clarified by the authors now, unless any one of the other people running the meeting doesn't think that's where we're at. So I think we're at time. I think we're at the vote. It seems other people agree with me.
Let's go ahead and proceed with the vote then on the motion that was provided incorporating the friendly amendments.
Give me just a second to plop this in the chat so everyone can look. And Eric, if you would be so kind, can you please check and make sure I got your amendments correct, because there were some parts I wasn't totally clear on.
And we're looking in the chat, or we're looking at the screen?
Just put it in the chat. We'll get this thing out of the way on the screen. So I think the question I had was about this paragraph. Did I incorporate your changes correctly?
Position statements, policies. Take me 1 second to find it. Very, very quick. Okay.
Sorry, am I missing something? I thought we just voted no on replacing Gaza with Middle East, but now I'm hearing that Middle East will be replaced. Can someone explain to me what happened there? I thought when we voted no on the amendment, we were voting actually on not replacing Gaza with Middle East. Thank you.
Sorry, I have two questions going at the same time here. the vote was on, sorry, the replacement was accepted as a friendly amendment. That's not for discussion or further vote. The rest of the amendment offered by Alicia was the thing that we just voted on, and that was to remove a significant portion of the original and also change a few other pieces of wording. So we voted not to accept those other changes. If the authors wish to accept changes along the way, they are allowed to do that as a friendly amendment, and they did so. Yeah, hold on one second. I need to consult with other people about one of these other questions. Thank you, everyone, for your patience.
If it's appropriate, I can say everything that I've suggested is in there.
Thank you, Eric.
Okay, so the other question was clarified. It is time to vote. That's no further discussion, no further speakers supposed to be lined up at this point.
Okay, so the final version with friendly amendments is in the chat and is on your screen, which I'm sorry, I can't show the whole thing at once, but this is the version that we are voting on now. As soon as I can find the poll. And just a reminder, please, that only senators should vote. Ten more seconds. And last call. There being 101 ayes and 38 nays, that motion carries.
Thank you for everyone's participation. We will now move to the next item of business. Item 12 concerns a letter to me from 26 Minnesota state legislators, as well as my response, and has been presented for information purposes. Item 13 concerns a letter from Professor B to the author of the new business item that was raised at the November 30th meeting and is also presented for information. Item 14 concerns old business. There is no old business for the University Senate. Item 15 concerns new business for the University Senate. Please note that any new business will be referred to a committee unless special permission is granted by 2/3 of those voting and present. Is there any new business? I'm not seeing any such motion or hand. Oh, there is a hand. Jonathan.
Hi, everyone. Jonathan Sachs, CSE professor, senator. I just had a actually point of clarification that I wondered if it should be new business. Somebody during that discussion said something that was on my mind, which was, did I really have enough time to talk to my constituency about this resolution? I didn't hear any further discussion of that point, and I was hoping there's an opportunity for those of us who have been doing this for a while but don't really know how to bring this issue to our constituency on such short notice, for example. I'm not sure I know how to do my job as a senator, and I heard that echoed in the discussion, and there was no follow-up on that, and I would love it if there could be follow-up on that.
Mark,
Um,
B maybe,
sorry.
something we could work on. in
Well, I just wanted to clarify the reason. Sometimes people, this isn't quite new business, but I'm taking this more or less as a point of information. Sometimes people do want to raise something with their constituents with respect to the agendas. That is why the agendas are set 2 weeks in advance and distributed two weeks in advance. I believe that's the actual time frame here. I'm just checking to see if that's correct in with my colleagues here. So the position statement was on the original agenda. And that it is sometimes a frustration for somebody who wants to bring something to Senate. Your two options are get it on the agenda 2 weeks ahead of time, or raise it as an item of new business. The reason we default to not considering items of new business in the rules is, again, so that people have the opportunity to consult with their constituents. So agenda is set ahead of time so that people have an opportunity to consult, and new business is by presumption not always considered right away, so that people have an opportunity to consult with their constituents. As to new business, if 2/3 of those voting wish to consider it anyway without having time for consultation with constituents, they are allowed to do that. So I hope that clarifies.
And so just lastly, this was sent to me 2 weeks ago, this document, or this was sent to me 3 days ago?
I'm not quite sure what date senators received the dockets. Okay, 2 days ago, 3 days ago. Sorry, I'm getting clarification of that. It was not that far ahead of time, but it was as far ahead of time as was practicable with all the business that was being proposed.
Okay, it's not enough time for me to talk to faculty in the College of Science and Engineering about this, and it just seems like an important new business that we figure out a way to give senators enough time to actually consult their constituency on these matters of grave importance. Thank you.
Mark, you look like you would like to comment.
Yeah, I just, was going to wait and just mention that I think the original new business item, when it was presented, and someone can correct me on this, I believe it was for discussion and a vote, probably on the new business item in November. And that sort of didn't get taken up for discussion. Don't quote, I don't remember the details. I'm sorry. But in conversations with the authors of the resolution, there was a sense of urgency of trying to sort of get the resolution to the Senate. Jonathan, this might be an error on my part as SCC chair in terms of an error in judgment. We took it up as a pretty serious topic for discussion at our February 12th SCC meeting. We considered, amendments. We considered routing it through other committees, and the SCC voted to approve a motion to put it on this Senate agenda for discussion and a vote. And I hear you about not having enough time for that, and I'll take responsibility for that. I'm sorry. Try to do better.
I didn't mean it as a criticism, Mark. I found that this has been an issue for me since I joined the Senate, which is that I basically don't know how to do this job. And I think that's an issue. I don't know how to talk to my constituencies about these issues. And this seemed like a really important one to have plenty of time that we could really do it. It's not a criticism of you, but thank you for addressing that.
Okay. Seeing no other new business, is there a motion for adjournment?
I motion for adjournment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Amber, please initiate the poll.
Give me 1 second here, having a technical difficulty. Couple more seconds. And last call. There being 128 ayes and 0 nays, that motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time. I will now call the Faculty Senate to order. Item 2 concerns administrative responses to the Faculty Senate action has been presented for information. There are none pending. Item number 3 is the approval of minutes from the Faculty Senate meeting on November 30th, 2023. Amber, please initiate the poll.
Couple more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. There being 79 ayes and 0 nays, that motion carries.
Thank you. Item number 4 will be the FCC report. Professor Mark B., the floor is yours.
Sorry, you caught me sending an email to Jonathan Sachs offering to meet for coffee to talk about new business. Give me just a second, please. All right. Thank you, President Ettinger. The FCC's met 4 times since the last time this body met at the end of November, including earlier today. And I just want to take a couple minutes to highlight a couple of the key things the committee's worked on. So as the president mentioned earlier, the 2024 legislative session kicked off earlier this month. And as a reminder, the U has 2 faculty legislative liaisons, and they're currently Donna Spanis-Martin and Rob Blair. And one of their key roles is to represent a faculty voice in advocating for legislative decisions that positively affect the university. In doing so, they are charged to coordinate messaging with government and community relations, and to develop their own legislative and advocacy priorities with direction and input from the FCC. And so in January, the FCC Vice Chair Jen Goodnow and I sent a letter to the faculty legislative liaisons outlining the FCC's direction and input to their legislative priorities. That letter is included for information as item number 8 on today's Faculty Senate agenda. The letter asks our legislative liaisons to strongly support the U's supplemental budget and HEPA requests. And perhaps more importantly, the letter also directs the liaisons to begin trying to lay some groundwork for needed investments by the state to support the university's workforce. And bear with me, I'll just quote from the letter to give you a sense of the FCC's direction here. Quote, "The #1 request of the FCC is that you advocate strongly for new resources from the state that would allow..." Are you kidding me? You've been watching me move my mouth this long? I totally
No, it was only like it flipped off for like 4 seconds.
I didn't touch anything. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm glad of that. I'll start the quote again if that's okay. The #1 request is the FCC advocate strongly for new resources from the state that would allow the U to make badly needed reinvestments in its workforce. That is the nearly 27,000 people who deliver on the U's mission to the benefit of Minnesotans and the state. The letter goes on to say that together, the Workforce Reinvestment Resolution and the FCC report on faculty compensation make clear that the U must reprioritize the needs of its workforce, that competitive compensation is the key to effective reinvestment, and that meaningful reinvestment in employees will require significant allocations from the state. You can read the rest of the letter yourself. Also in January, the FCC met with Melissa Lopez-Franson, the U's new Executive Director of Government and Community Relations. And this was to help coordinate messaging between her office and the faculty legislative liaisons. We had a good discussion. We agreed that continuing the discussion would be a good idea. And the FCC looks forward to that opportunity, though it hasn't been scheduled just yet. I now want to report on the FCC's actions related both to the development of new administrative policy on unit statements and the resolution we'll be considering later on from the Senate Committee on Academic Freedom and Tenure. As you heard from the provost at the University Senate meeting, discussions around developing new policy began early in the fall 2022 semester. And for a variety of different reasons, those efforts sort of remained on kind of a slow burn into, through the beginning of the fall 2023 semester. Over the course of that year, the FCC was sort of loosely monitoring progress with periodic check-ins with the administration. After the events of October 7th, of course, the conversation accelerated quite dramatically, resulting in a working draft of a policy from the provost's office that by early December was starting along a path of consultation within shared governance, beginning, as it should, with AF&T. And this is when the FCC started getting maybe a bit more involved. So the FCC Vice Chair, Jen Goodnow, and I attended the AF&T meeting on December 8th, where the provost discussed the draft policy with that committee. At the FCC meeting on December 14th, the FCC discussed the draft policy and the consultation plan with the chair of AF&T. And it became clear from those conversations that there were concerns about the pace and the depth of consultation that was occurring. And there was some desire on the part of AF&T to slow things down so that they could have additional time to more carefully consider the issues. So in mid to late January, FCC Vice Chair and I started some quiet conversations with the board office, with the administration, to see if there was some scope for slowing things down. In hindsight, it was a mistake not to include the AF&T chair in those conversations, but I didn't. I should have. At the time, we were really sort of viewing those conversations as more sort of just information gathering to see if, what possibilities existed. The responses we got were generally affirmative. Yes, things could slow down. Yes, it would be better to go slower together than faster apart. But we also heard that things couldn't slow down indefinitely, and that the university needed a reasonable target date for having an approved policy of some kind. Then on January 31st, AF&T submitted a resolution and corresponding statement for discussion at today's Faculty Senate meeting, essentially asking for policy development to slow down and for AF&T to be given time to study and understand the relevant issues, and for AF&T to have a significant role on future policy development. It was at this time when I decided as FCC chair to really sort of lean into an important element of the FCC charge, and that is, and I'm quoting here from the charge, to serve as a coordinating body between the president, which I took as the administration, and the Faculty Senate or a committee of the Faculty Senate. So a flurry of meetings, conversations took place involving the FCC leadership, the provost, the chair of AF&T, and I cleared most of the agenda, which had already been set for the February 8th FCC meeting to have a full committee discussion with both the provost and the AF&T chair on developing new policy around unit statements. Coming out of that meeting, and again, thinking of the FCC as a coordinating body between the administration and a committee of the Faculty Senate, I thought I could see a couple of options to move things forward and what I thought everyone might find is sort of a positive direction. I'll spare you the details other than to say those options were pretty thoroughly explored over the following week or so, and they ultimately didn't pan out. And so in the end, AF&T submitted a resolution that was revised based on FCC feedback, and the FCC approved putting that resolution on today's Faculty Senate agenda for discussion and a vote. And that concludes the FCC chair's report. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are some.
Any questions for Professor B? Yeah, Eric, please proceed.
Part of my job is just to quibble with Mark on little things. I would quibble with one point there, right? Was that the resolution was already submitted on the 31st of January. So it wasn't that we sort of had a lot of discussions and then submitted it. We had submitted it, and some of those discussions were limited by the fact that the committee had sort of moved and anything else was going against what that committee had voted on the 31st. Wow, that's all.
Apologies, Eric, if I got my timeline wrong. I don't recall you pointing that out when I shared these comments with you earlier today, but I'm sorry if I missed that. Thanks.
No, that could be my fault too. So,
other questions?
So there'll be more on that topic in a few minutes. Item number 5 concerns proposed changes to the Faculty Senate Constitution, bylaws, and rules. Professor B will present this topic.
So thank you again, President Edinger. If you may recall, over the past couple of years, there have been an effort to sort of revise the Constitution, bylaws, and rules of the University Senate, the Faculty Senate, and other senates as well. Nearly all of those revisions have now sort of been improved and implemented, except the ones before you today. And if you recall, we actually voted on these at our last Faculty Senate meeting in November, and there was a majority that was approved the revisions, but it didn't meet the 2/3 majority. Constitution, bylaws, or rules, one of those specifies that if it's not sort of doesn't hit the 2/3 majority in one meeting, it can be considered in 2 meetings, 2 consecutive meetings, and if it passes with a majority, then it's approved. And so we're here today for that second meeting. I think there was a pretty strong support. Last time there was no discussion that I recall, and so before you today is an opportunity to vote a second time on approving the revisions to the Faculty Senate. I'll just point out that all of the other senates have sort of approved theirs, and so this is really just kind of the last step along the way. So with that, maybe Amber, I'll turn it over to you if it's appropriate to do so, to have a vote.
Ten more seconds. And last call. There being 87 ayes and 1 nay, that motion does carry.
Very good. I mean, just for clarification's sake, the ballot indicated that it needed 100 votes, but perhaps that was from the last time when it needed the higher number.
Oh, you are correct. I was thinking I had 77 in my head for some reason. So that will be probably sent out electronically. We'll discuss internally, but has not yet passed.
So that's not 50 what does it take this time? 51%?
50% of the sitting membership, so not of those present and voting.
Okay. Not that I was looking to derail something that had such overwhelming support.
It's a technicality.
All right. Item number 6 concerns a statement from the Academic Freedom and Tenure Committee, which has been presented for information. Item number 7 is discussion and action on a resolution from the Academic Freedom and Tenure Committee, and I will call on Professor Eric Van Wyck to present this item. Eric.
Yeah, thank you, President Edinger, and thanks to Faculty Senate for letting us have this opportunity. So the resolution we're bringing forward is really, I think, focused on how we sort of move forward on this issue of unit statements. So the question is sort of how and when departments or other academic units can make statements on matters of public interest, and specifically to what extent does academic freedom apply not just to individual faculty, but extend to sort of groups of faculty or academic units. Some will see academic freedom as something that's limited to individuals, but there are collective notions to this as well. So, departments have, the freedom to set the curriculum for their courses as they see fit. Departments may curate displays or exhibits, and those may also need some sort of academic freedom protections to keep interference from getting into those processes. You may recall this happened a little bit in the incident years ago with the Troubled Waters film that was shown. So in the end, there's a lot of sort of nuance to these kinds of questions. This is something that the president and the provost pointed out at the University Senate earlier today. So the point of the resolution here is not so much to talk about what a policy might look like. Instead, it's really about the process by which we want to go about creating such policies. So as Mark mentioned, right, there were some concerns in the AF&T meeting on December 8th about the process moving a little too quickly and the consultation being a little too limited in scope. And we're happy that a longer time frame now seems to be available for this. So that I think is important and a big important step forward. But the primary reason that the committee wants to bring this resolution to the Faculty Senate, right, is that we think the Faculty Senate really should be involved in this, right? For faculty as a unit, as a body to be involved in these sort of discussions, it's the Faculty Senate is the organ through which that happens best. So when the Faculty Senate, moves on a particular topic, that carries more weight and is listened to more carefully, I believe, than if it's simply the AF&T committee, or certainly if it's, say me as chair of AF&T having input on particular policies that we might have. So that's why we wanted to get the Faculty Senate involved, mostly to identify this path forward. That is sort of today's topic and the topic of that resolution. And then hopefully we will come up with some recommendations and then bring those back to Faculty Senate. And we could talk about, specifics of policy at some future meeting, perhaps the first one in the fall, depending on how things work out. So the point is that Faculty Senate is sort of the most important and useful vehicle for ensuring that faculty voices get heard on issues like this. So, but to the bulk or the heart of the resolution, I suppose, right, what we're really after here is a chance for AF&T to be asked to dive into this topic in a little more detail and depth, right, to study and understand it a bit more. We'd like to sort of carve out space for faculty to form a coherent message on their views on this quite difficult and nuanced topic. As Mark mentioned, right, AF&T is the committee that the Faculty Senate has set up to sort of dive into these sorts of things. And so some group needs to spend some time, understand things, and report back. So that's what we are essentially after in this resolution. The committee has discussed this a little bit, right? So as the provost mentioned in University Senate back in the fall of 2022, we had a meeting about it, but then really nothing until we were in kind of a sprint in December of last year to try and move forward. So that's sort of the bulk of it, right, is give AF&T a chance to dive into this properly. Our plan would be to produce some set of recommendations that sort of jive with the board's policy on academic freedom and responsibility, right? So in our meeting in 2022, the sense of the committee was that policy in broad strokes sort of covered this topic, but clearly, we were missing the sort of administrative policy that put some clarifications in there, right? Issues about disclaimers and those sort of things that have been discussed. So that's what we intend to sort of move on, is creating that set of recommendations. While there is more sort of appears to be more time, we do sort of want to move in a timely way, right? So we would anticipate, if things go well, having something pulled together by the end of this academic year, so that at our May meeting, we have something to hopefully vote on and get out of our committee. That would allow it to fit nicely, I believe, into the presidential task force that the provost mentioned in the University Senate meeting, right? I think AF&T these two groups could work quite well together. So giving faculty sort of a space to come up with their view and understanding of this issue and how that fits into that task force, I think could go quite well. The other thing I anticipate the committee wanting to do is develop some sort of collection of guidelines and best practices around how these statements are made. I've talked to a few department chairs, and they feel a little bit lost in the woods, that this is an important thing. They're not quite sure how to negotiate the sort of any issues that come up. And so that's something I think could be most beneficial. That I think would take longer, right? So a policy may be something that points to a future set of guidelines and suggestions for suggestions and that sort of thing to be meaningful. I think there'd be a lot more consultation that has to happen than we could pull off in a few months. But if done right, you know, we might be able to bring the campus to a place of understanding about the best way to sort of go about this. That's sort of the gist of what the resolution is about. If there's questions or comments, I'd be happy to discuss it with folks.
Very good. As with how we handled it at the University Senate earlier today, if you have any questions or comments, please raise your hand and send a chat to Aaron Heath, stating whether your comment is pro, con, or other, and Aaron will call on people in the appropriate order. While we're doing that, I would highlight the note that the chat that Amber provided that the constitutional amendment did actually pass with 76 votes was sufficient. The 100 designation had been from the prior time when, you know, it required, I think, the 2/3 vote. So. Any questions or comments related to Eric's resolution? Jerry, please. Oh, I'm sorry, Aaron's supposed to talk. Sorry.
Okay, it's okay. Jerry, are you pro or con?
I'm pro, but I can't seem to find you on my chat list, so you're being discriminated against.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
So I've thought about this a lot for the last little bit. And I think, you know, Eric presented the things quite well. It's a very complicated issue in that it needs to be studied well. I think time is a good idea. Particularly, I was thinking that, you know, there are departments like ecology and evolution that actually might want to have a statement on evolution. I assume pro-evolution. Or there might be other issues in this age of scientific denial and book censorship where departments might, or maybe ethics would like to have a departmental statement on truth, all of political concern, but kind of thing that within an academic environment, they have a perfect right to say that their department believes in truth. I think it's not, you know, it might not be controversial to us, but it might be controversial to a public that doesn't believe in it because they believe only in Fox News. So there are many things that we have an academic interest in having departmental statements on because they're at our basic core of what we are as an academic unit. And so I think it's really worth making sure that we can have a uniform opinion on things which are academic necessities. At the same time, you don't want to impose your political belief on a less than agreeing faculty. So we want to make sure that whatever you do still allows departments to have statements that are disciplinarily true, yet not commit things which other faculty may be uncomfortable with, or that may find, you know, a unpleasant workplace because of being forced to sign their name to something.
30 seconds remaining.
I'm fine. I'm done. Thanks for the warning.
Thanks, Jerry. Yeah, I think those are things that the committee would want to get into, right? It's really about sort of figuring out how to negotiate those potential conflicts between individuals in a department and then the department making a statement, and that's where it gets. Yeah, that's where it gets interesting, right? That's why it's something it's a little hard to sort of do in one meeting or something. So.
Okay, next we have Jessica Johnson. Her perspective is other.
Thank you for the recognition. I would also appreciate clarification on the responsibility of units to provide statements or to provide those things, potentially to some of the earlier points of what is the responsibility of a department to speak into an issue, and then the possibility that there would be an expectation that departments must speak to an issue and must have a statement regarding a position on things that may be with outside of their scope of the academic, similar to the proposal that we just did through the University Senate, that maybe needs to come from a much bigger unit within the university, and that that there potentially should be some language on levels of I'm not sure I'm going to explain this well. I apologize. I wouldn't want someone to come to my department and ask why we didn't have a statement on the violence happening in the Middle East. That doesn't feel like it should be coming from my department. That should be coming from a different level, as opposed to I'm in family medicine and community health. We should absolutely have statements potentially around health equity issues. And so some of that scope of what should be coming from units, or what should be coming from the faculty, or what should be coming from the university, there may be some helpful clarifying language in what certain units of the university might be responsible for, and what should really be coming from either larger units or from individuals, and some clarifying within that, so that there wouldn't be, well, that department doesn't have a statement on that, they must not care at all. And that wouldn't be relevant or appropriate for that level of a group to have a statement or a policy. Thank you.
Thanks. Just to clarify one thing, right? So the academic freedom and responsibility policy, the responsibility there is not to, encourage or require statements to be made. It's really to make sure that you indicate you're not speaking for the institution when you speak on these kinds of matters. But I think your point is well taken, right? That at what point is there some pressure to say something when a department feels they don't want to, or don't feel they have the capacity or the backing to sort of do that. But those are things I think we would expect, quite a bit of leeway given to departments to make those decisions on what they feel they can speak to and what they feel they would not want to speak to, right? It's very hard. Sometimes there are issues of public interest that feel distant from a particular discipline, but you talk to someone in that discipline and they really, actually, this is something that kind of cuts into what we actually do as scholars. And so there is a relationship that's not immediately obvious. And so, recognizing that is something I expect the committee to spend some time on, and would be part of any recommendation.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Don't see any other questions or comments. Seeing none, let's go ahead, I guess, Amber, and please initiate the vote.
Ten more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. There being 78 ayes and 5 nays, that motion carries.
Very good. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Item number 8 concerns a letter from the FCC to the faculty legislative liaisons and has been presented for information. Item 9 concerns old business. There is no old business for the Faculty Senate. Item 10 concerns new business for the Faculty Senate. Please note that any new business will be referred to committee unless special permission is granted by 2/3 of those voting and present. Is there any new business? Yes, David.
I'd like to personally thank Interim President Ettinger for his service. This is conceivably the last meeting which you will be chairing.
Thank you very much. Timeline's not totally determined. Normal academic year being July through June, it's possible I'll be here through the end of the spring term. I don't know when your next meeting is, but thank you either way.
It doesn't hurt to say thank you.
Seeing no other new business, is there a motion for adjournment?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Amber, please initiate the poll.
Couple more seconds if you wish to vote. And the last call. There being 81 ayes and 0 nays, that motion carries.
Thank you all very much.